How is it? How is it now?
Welcome to Motoko Bootcamp 2023, and this is a lecture on character, text, and iterators.
Low?
So the first topic on the list is the type
I
char
don't know why the sound
for
is always
characters.
low.
It's everything from alphabet,
Okay.
letters,
Well,
digits, and any other
It's
character.
maximum
You can
right
declare
now.
that in Motoko using this
lecture.
syntax. Be careful because if you have multiple characters, it's a text and it's not a char. Okay, so for a quick demo, I have an actor that is already set up and I have all the files, the fx.json. And we can declare a character, as we've seen before, with the following syntax. So let's see of type char is equal to C. As you can see, I'm using single quotes. If you use double quotes, Motoko will think that it's a text, so we can try. And you will see an error, literal of type text does not have expected types. So you need to use single quotes. A character can be a letter, can be another number, so like this, for example. And it can even be some other character. So we have, let's say, this one. So yeah, you have quite a few characters. When we play with characters, we can import the char module like this from the base library, and it contains manipulation and functions that you can use on characters. To find more information on the char module, we can go to internetcomputer.org, and we can go on the right corner, type char, and then the first result will be the char module documentation. So we have the type, definition of what is a char. As we can see, a character is represented as Unicode, which we'll see later. And then we have the functions that we can use with all the function signatures. So for example, we can take a char and convert it to a NAT32. We can take a char and convert it to text. And we have all those functions. So maybe we can try one just to see how we can use those functions. So let's say we want to use isDigit, which will return true if our character is 0 or 9, a digit between 0 and 9. Otherwise, it will return false. So in order to try the module, we can create a test function like this, so public function test, and it will return a boolean, and we just want to try it out. So let's see char.isDigit, and we will code it on C, which is defined here, and is the character C. So it should return false. We can deploy our example. So the canister is called example. And then, so if we call tests, we should get false. And it seems to work. So just a warning on the test function that I'm using here. It's to show some code examples and go through the code with you, but this is not a proper way to do tests in Motoko, and there will be a dedicated lecture on tests. So one thing that can be surprising with the type char is how the type appear in the terminal, and I'm going to show you this through an example. This function is called text to char. It will take a text and return all the characters of this text inside an array. I've done that using array.append, which is not the proper way to do it. You should use a buffer that we will see later, because the buffer is more efficient. This will, every time the loop is running, it will create a new array and put the values inside. So this is not efficient in memory and space. This is just for the example. So I've already deployed it. Let's try it out. So text to char. And let's try hello. And as you can see, we don't get the characters as expected, but we get those numbers, NAT32. And so this is related to what we've seen in the documentation, is that characters are implemented as, are represented as Unicode points, and I'll explain that. Before we talk about those Unicode points, we need to talk about ASCII, which is the ancestor to Unicode. ASCII is trying to solve a question, which is how to represent letters inside a computer. And the way to do that is to associate with each letter a number, and then encode this number into binary, and then computer can understand binary. So each letter in ASCII, which stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange, is going to have a number associated, and then this number is going to be encoded and stored inside the computer. And that's how you can represent letters with a computer. ASCII can represent 128 standard characters, which is enough for the alphabet, the digits, and some characters. Unfortunately, it's not enough to represent all characters that exist. It's not enough to represent emojis, it's not enough to represent characters from other alphabets. That's why we have to come up with another standard which extends ASCII. It's Unicode, and it can represent almost anything you can think of. And Unicode is compatible with ASCII. So I am back inside the same actor as before, but I've cleaned up the code so we can start again from a fresh perspective. So we have imported the Char module again, and we are going to print D of type Char, but it will be capital D. And then we will write a function tests, and inside this function, which will return nothing, I want to print something. So I'm going to present a new module, which is the debug module. And this is useful for printing informations. So if you do debug.print, you will be able to print things inside your terminal. And we want to print, basically, we want to convert the Char to a NAT32, which will be the Unicode representation. So this will be a NAT32, but this command can only take text as input. So we need to convert that to text. And there is a special one, which is debug.show, that will convert anything you have inside the parentheses into a text that can be printed by debug.print. So let's deploy our actor. And if we call the function tests, we have nothing that is printed because actually debug.print, the output of this command is shown inside the replica terminal. So we can go here and we can see that we have 68, which corresponds to the value in the table. So everything seems to work. One thing to note is that if you're using debug.print, you can only do this if you are using a local replica, because on the internet computer mainnet, you don't have access to this tab. Actually, this tab doesn't really exist anywhere. So there are other ways to print information. For example, you can use logs, but you cannot really depend on this debug.print. The next type is the type text. A text is a sequence of characters. It can be a word, like hello, it can be a sequence of digits, or it can even be the combination of the two with the concatenation operator. We can define a text with the following syntax. Let t of type text is equal to hello. One thing that we can do with text is get the size of the text. So let's say s of type nat will be t.size. And the size corresponds to the number of characters. So in that case, that would be 5. One other thing that we can do is concatenate two texts. So let's say we have another one, which is world. We can do something like this, and the concatenation operator is this one. Once again, if we go on the internetcomputer.org website and we go on the text documentation, we can see that we have everything for the text module, which indicates, for example, that we can access the size, we can concatenate text, and of course we have the list of functions here. One thing that you will note on this page is that you have something called pattern, so it's a type, which is defined as follows. A pattern is either a character, a text, or a predicate. So a character will be a character, can be like C, B, A. A text will be a word or anything that we've seen before. And a predicate is going to match a character with a Boolean. So for example, a predicate could be, is my character a digit? So if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then it will be matched to true, and the predicate will be validated. This is really useful if you want to do manipulation on text. You have to understand what is a pattern. And then you can use patterns to, for example, return true if a text contains a match for the pattern. So let's try it out. One important thing to note regarding pattern is that by default, this type doesn't exist in Motoko. So if you write something like this, which is a valid pattern, you will get an error unbound type pattern. So to import the type, we need to import the module because this is inside the text module that pattern is defined. And once we do that, we can import the type as follows. So type pattern is text dot pattern. And the error has disappeared. So that's our pattern. Now we want to try a function. So let's say we want to try a text which is like, let's say Motoko, and then we want to check if C is contained inside this text. So to get this information, we can do text.contains, and it will take a text and a pattern. So the text we want to test is Motoko. Sorry, we can use the variable, the text, and then the pattern is P. And so this will be returned by the function. So if we deploy this function, we should get no. So we can try it out. Once again, it's the same canister that I've been using for the whole video. And now we can call tests, and it returns false. And maybe if we have something else, like Bootcamp, we should get true this time. So we need to deploy again. And we got true. So this was one type of pattern, but we also have other types. So for example, we could have a pattern like this. So P2 of type pattern, and it will be this time a text, and then the value of the text inside of it. So auto up, and we should try it out with text too. So let's maybe, yeah, like this. So I think we should go false because there is not this text inside. And then if we modify with the Motoko, yeah, like this, we should go true. And that's it, we get true. And the last type was the predicate. This one is a bit more involved, but we can try it out. So it's a predicate. And basically we need to input a function that will take a char and will return a bool. And for example, that could be something like, let's say char.isDigit. So for that, we need to import the char module. And so maybe we can change that to this. So it will basically, if we do text.contains with the pattern number 3, this will test if there is any character inside the text that is a digit. So we have this, which should work. So if we try with text2, we should get true. And with text1, we should get false. So true, and now we can redeploy again. And then we can call this function, and we got false. So that's perfect. Two other functions that can be really useful in the text module are encode UTF-8 and decode UTF-8. So UTF-8 is a common standard that is used to encode text across the web. And we can convert text to blob and get text from blob. So we can try it out. Just need to import the text module again. And we will create a public function that take a text and return a blob. So we're just gonna copy the function. Text.toBlob. one thing that is not explained in the Motoko Bootcamp documentation so far is that we don't really need this return every time. You can put it, but you can also just have your expression and the latest expression that is evaluated. So in this case, this one, because there is only this, but this is the latest expression that will be automatically returned by the function. So let's try out our function text to blob. We can do something like this. We can call hello. And as you can see, we have the answer, which is a blob. It's the candid syntax. But maybe you want more information because we don't really see any information on the blob itself. We just see that it is encoded, but we don't see how it is encoded. So if you want more information, you can do this and add a flag, which is called output, and it will change the type of the output. And we can use row. And so with row, you will see the hexadecimal. Of course, we also have the public function, also have the function blob to text. But in this case, we need to be careful because the text that will be written is optional. This is to prevent, this is to take care of the case where the blob that we give is not a valid UTF-8. So I guess if we try to deploy that, this will be a bit annoying to test because of the candid syntax, but we can do hello. I think we can do this blob hello. And then if we, let's try it out. Okay, so blob to text. And it should return hello. Yes, optional hello.
The last type for today is the type iter, so iterator. I remember that when I started Motoko, it was a new concept for me and it was a bit confusing. So I think a good analogy is in Super Mario, you have those blocks that you can jump on and you get coins, coins, coins until the block is empty and you get nothing. And the iterator is pretty much the same. You can consume it, you can call it, but then at some point the iterator will be empty and it will return a null value, and that's how you know the iterator is consumed. The easiest way to understand what is an iterator is to use one. And we can do that by importing the iter module from the base library. So it's the same syntax as usual. And then we can create our first iterator with this syntax. So I equal iter.range. So we will go from 0 to 10. So this iterator is going to call all the numbers from 0 to 10, and then it's going to return null, and that will be the end of the iterator. Actually, iterators are very often used with loops. So we can do something like this. I will first create a function test. And then for, let's say, number in E, we can do something. So we can do debug.print, debug show, oops, and then number. So this will actually call all the values inside the iterator, and we will see that. So we just need to deploy. Okay, so our canister has been deployed, and I can call the test function. And I should be able to see, yes, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this seems to work as we want. So I've decided to talk about iterators today with character and text because those concepts are related. So if we have a text, if we have like a text like this, again, Motoko, then we can do something. So we can actually iterate over all the characters in the text. So just need to do that. And then we can do for, let's say, letter in t.char, chars. So this is like going to create an iterator based on the characters. And then again, we can do debug.print the letter. Just need to make sure that it's a car, so we need this debug show again. And we have imported debug. And again, if we try to deploy and then try to call the test function, we can see all the characters. So Motoko. So once again, new type, new module, and new documentation. And the module always starts with the definition of the type. So this is the formal definition of what is an iterator. It can seem a bit complicated because it requires two concepts that we haven't seen so far, which is the generic types and the optional types. It will be explained in more details, but just for today, a generic type can be any type, can represent anything. So it could be a nat, instead of t, it could be a nat, it could be a char, a text. And the optional type represents the type or the value null. So the value null is used to represent the absence of value. And in this case, it represents the end of the iterator if the function next that we can call on the iterator returns null. It means that the iterator is consumed and the iteration is finished. Another time when iterators are useful in Motoko is with arrays. So let's say we have an array. This time will be an array of text. And let's say we have languages, so like Rust, Motoko, TypeScript, Python, and so on. We can actually use, again, a for loop, so public function test, turn async. So for language in array.vaults. So this is, again, the same kind of structure as with when we did the text.cars. Again, this is an iterator here that we are creating, and we are instantly using it in the for loop. And we can show that. So let's try that. And this is working as expected. With the iter module, we can also create iterators from our data structures. So like if we have the array, we can do iter.fromArray. And then, so like let e is equal to iter from array, and then it's like this. And then the array that we want. And with that iterator, we can actually use it to get the size of the array. So iter.size is going to take an iterator, and it's going to disregard whatever is inside the iterator, but it's going to count how much elements. So it's going to basically return the size like this. So this is a pretty complicated way to get the size, but it does work. So and then can deploy. And we should get 6, and that's it.
Okay, looks like it's over. I didn't have the sound, so wasn't sure. So someone found the debug.show in the documentation. Yep, I'm sending it. David, I think you sent it to host and panelist only, so I'm going to send it again in the chat. This is from the debug module. Oh, yeah. So I only see one question, which is what does vals from .vals stands for, and it stands for values. Otherwise, I think I've answered the other questions. If you guys don't have any question, it's everything you need to know right now about character, text, and iterators. So yeah, even if you have something, okay, I can see the questions are popping up. Okay. Okay. Make sure to use the Q&A feature for the questions. So let's go to the playground as usually. Yes, the first question was, is the dièse necessary for the pattern? And yes, it is. If you go there. So I think the pattern is defined in the text. Yep, it's here. You can actually copy that. And so this is a type that is defined here, which is a type variant. So the pattern is either a character of type char, a text of type text, or a predicate of type. This is a function type, so it takes a character and it returns a Boolean. And when you use a variant type, it's needed to use the dièse like this. So yes. Is someone raised their hand? So yeah, Sol. Sol, I think you raise your hand and you can talk now. So is pattern patching case insensitive? I'm not sure actually. Let's try. I think I'll try with something simpler. I think it's case sensitive. I'll say that, but let's verify actually. So I like this example. It's pretty easy to understand. Let's say Monday, Tuesday. Okay. Let's say greet, text today, return a text. So we want to switch on D. And then, let's see. Let's see what happens if we do this, for example. I think it's not gonna. Yeah, okay, we can, I mean, we can already see that it's not working. So this pattern is never matched. Yeah, this is case sensitive, so I hope it answers the question. Can you explain iterators once more? Yes. So an iterator, you can get information because this is actually a library. So the Iter library. And an iterator is an object which is defined like this. So this is how you define an object. And it's an object which has only one function on it that you can call. And this function is called next. It takes no arguments and it returns an optional value of the type of the iterator. So for example, an iterator of type nat would be an object that you can call and would return a nat, an optional nat. And oops. So we can do this like this. And so, yeah, we have already defined it. So I'm just putting this for the clarity, but it's not necessary. We could remove it. And so let's define our first iterator, and that would be iter.range between 0 and 5. And so this I is an object that we can call, and it's going to output, in this case, all the natural numbers between 0 to 5. 0 included, 5 excluded. So let's see what happened. Let's do that. So this function is called call I. It takes no argument and it returns a nat. Well, an optional nat. And it will just return I.next. So we can call it like this. I will remove that. We don't really need this, so I'm just going to remove it. Oh, I'm keeping it for clarity. Okay. Our canister is being deployed. So as you can see, we have mock. This is the Motoko compiler. We have a version. So Motoko compiler is still in beta version. We are not at the version 1 yet. Compiling code and creating the WASM as we've already seen, and then the canister ID is here. Okay. So if we call the first time, we get 0, optional 0. Then we can call another time, we will get 1, and then 2. And this is actually pretty useful because I mean, right now it doesn't seem like crazy useful because it's just natural numbers. But one very important thing about Iter in Motoko, and it's also the case in other languages, but in Motoko it's very much used because you can create Iter, for example, from an array, and even from other data structures. So let's say we have an array, which is Motoko Rust. And up, I'm just removing that. We are using this function, iter from array. This will create an iterator from the array that we provide. So like this. And this time it's not a nat, it's going to be a text. And as you can see, as you can imagine, this is already a bit more useful. So we get Motoko, we get Rust, then JavaScript. And then once the iterator is over, this is going to return null. And this is when the iterator is consumed. And once it's consumed, it's only going to return null every time. So we can try, and now we are done. So the last one of the last things that iterators are very useful for is the loop. So we've already seen that in a few other examples, but I can show you again. Let's say we want to know, let's say we want to concatenate everything inside the array. So we want to get only one text from those three pieces of text. We could do something like for language in E. So E is the iterator again. We create a variable which is final results, which is a text. And then final results is equal, is assigned to final results and concatenate it with E, I. I'm sorry, this is the French coming back. And now we can remove that and just return E. Yeah, I forgot the name of the function. So concatenate. Yes. E dot next. So what's the problem? Yes, of course. This is the problem with the only problem with the iterator is that the type is not text but optional text, because once the iterator is over, we get null. So we could do something like, this is not very much recommended, but this is going to solve my problem. I could do something cleaner, but let's do something like this: option.unwrap, and it's going to remove the unwrap means that is going to remove the optional value and only take the text from it. The only problem of this function is that, once again, I think it's depreciated. I should use a switch or a do instead, but I like this function. And it's unsafe because if you get something null here, this is going to trap and it's going to stop your code. So, but in this case, it's never going to happen since we are iterating on E, and E is going to be over. So the loop is automatically going to stop whenever E is null. Okay, so it was quite complex. Yeah, I could also just do this. Good point. And now we should see. So it's actually doing something I was not expecting. It's actually trapping, because I thought that the fact that it would be okay, no, I think I understand. I think I understand. This is very much something to avoid what I've just done. This is very dangerous to write this. I wanted to show you like iterators, but this is actually a very bad example. So the problem here is that my iterator is actually being consumed here and here. So yeah, it's very bad. Let's what I wanted to do was this actually from the beginning. I don't know why I didn't do this. Yeah, this is what I wanted to do. Because whenever the loop is being looped for, so like the for is actually going to call e.next, and it's actually going to consume the iterator, and then I cannot consume it again. Anyway, now this should work. Yeah. So I hope that explains iterator. Spend a bit more time than I thought. Does iter.range 0 to 10 go from 0 to 9? or from 0 to 10, from 0 to 9. You can keep in mind that like you have 10 elements, so 0 to 9. What structure does an iterator use internally to store? I'm not sure. I think it's very much of like a primitive to the language, I think. So I don't think there is like some data structure to store, but good question. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Can we initialize char with a number? Yeah. So a character can be a number, so that could be like 9. Are emojis supported on the encoding? Yes, they should be, but I don't know. Sometimes it depends. It's a bit frustrating, but it should be. Yeah, it works. So it should be. I think now like all emojis are just Unicode representation, and they should be supported by default. Like for example, on the dashboard, the team names. This is like I can actually. Well, maybe not the best thing to show you the code of the verifier, but this is stored inside the Motoko canister, like not just the name text, but also the emoji. So yes. What's the difference between buffer.map and iter.fromArray? I think those are very similar operations. Like you will notice that like sometimes you have iter from array or like array to iter, like you have a lot of similarities between the different modules. Let me just verify buffer.map. Ah, wait, no, actually buffer.map is quite different, I would say. Where is buffer.map? Ah, here. It's possible that this actually use an iterator under the hood. We can actually look into it. If we go Definity, Motoko, module, can actually look into it. This is the code on GitHub of like the base library. So all the packages that you see here have been written by someone. Most of the time it's people at Definity, or it can be also like developer from the community. And you can see it's in buffer. You can see how the function that you use are implemented. So in your case, there was buffer.map. Buffer.map here. So yeah, it's actually just using like a buffer.vals and just adding the new element inside the new buffer and then returning the new buffer. So this is an iterator here. And pretty curious to see how iterators are implemented themselves. Yeah, it's not giving a lot of information that I was looking for. There are some piece of information missing, but that was I think that answered the question. So variant is an enumeration. Yeah. Yes, I'd say it's very similar to an enumeration. What value does a variant when converted to nat or int? I'm not sure, like, I understand the question. Like a variant is a type, but it can also have its own type. Like you can just use the variant like this, So just Monday or Tuesday or any day that you want. What's the problem here? What is wrong with this? Yes, it's not what I wanted to do. So you could do something like this, just using the variants. But what's pretty cool is that each variant can also have its own type. So you can actually store a value inside of it. So like it could be a text or anything, a nat, or even another type that you define. If you think about a good example of that, I don't have a good one at the top of my head, but like you could do something like this. And in this case, you could show, let's do something like this. Then you could get the value that is inside. So you would need in the case to name it. So you would need to use like this syntax. You couldn't call it text or like t or whatever or x, but you need to name it, and then you can actually, like for example, we could return it, and you could do the same for Tuesday, and then return. We need to convert it if we want some text, but like yeah, that's something that is possible to do, and it's pretty interesting that you can store like different types inside the variant. Once you exhaust an iterator, can you back up, or in other words, perform the opposite of next? No. No, I'm pretty sure you can't. Just gonna verify it, but on the next size filter, make, yeah, no. No, the only thing would be to create a new iterator if you want to back it up. When can I use TS? At least you can use it for variants. So like this. This is better explained in the GitHub repository. I think there is a whole chapter about variants. Maybe 9 or something. No. Well, I think it's gonna be on the next day. It should be there, maybe. No. So yeah, not sure. It's here. Yeah, variants are explained here. There are, I think it's better examples. Those are better examples. Someone said there is ref range for Iter. Yes, but in that case, well, it's not it's not really what the person asked. Like, it's not really a previous function, but that could do kind of a trick for a similar behavior. Can you explain how to set times type? Yes, it's pretty. I mean, there's nothing really to know. You just need to import time. And then you can set the type like this. And I mean, it's nothing more than just doing what is here. the type time is just an int. So you could also do something like this if you want to, and not importing the module, but yeah, I think that's cleaner to do like this. Can I iterate through variants? No, I mean, an iterator is an iterator and a variant is a variant, but you could create an iterator with variants. Yes, you could do that. Could you define a function? Wait, I'm skipping one question. Can you repeat what the type is? Not sure which type you're talking about. Type is like a class. A type, yeah, so a type is defined like this. So type, I think I use the same example every time. Type students. And then it's going to be an object, and you can define other types. You can also just define a type with what I call those are like alias type. So it's just a name for another type. For example, let's say student's ID would be, for example, a nat. It's not gonna do anything in itself because it's just another name for a nat. But it can help, like if you are working on a project, it can help to create your own types so that you know that when you have a nat, it's not any type of nat, but it's actually a student ID. But I think most of you are talking about more advanced type, and the first like more advanced type is the object. So a student can have a name, which could be of type text. A student is gonna maybe have a score for the bootcamp. Maybe the student is graduated or not. And the student maybe has a principal ID, which would be of type principal. And yeah, and maybe the student has a team, which would be of type team, and team would be defined somewhere else. Like team would be either the penguin or the dragons and so on. And this would be a variant. This is kind of I think it's a pretty good example here to show what is a variant and what is an object. And yes, you have more advanced like type. We have seen the variants. We have seen the object. So like this. We have the tuples as well, which is like collection of multiple objects. Oops. Okay, last question. Can you define a function within a data type that you define? Yes. So we can use the student that we just defined. Increase score student. Or maybe just like maybe just show principal student. We take a student and we return a principal asynchronously, and it would be just s.principal. This is pretty bad function, not very useful, but principal ID. And so we need to actually populate this. I'm going to move to I think I am in the penguin. My score is 20. I just completed day 1. I didn't graduate, yes, and my principal ID is this one. I forgot this, yeah. And so it should return just my principal ID. Okay. Student.get, yeah. I mean, I meant with the type students trying to reuse the function. Student.get. So you want to talk about a class, like adding functions to the objects. It would be a class then to the type, but that's not for today. And we are we are just on time. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We have another mentorship session in 2 hours, I think. So it would be about day 1. I will also be able to answer like other questions. Yeah, anything that you wondering about is probably in day 3 or day 4 as well. See you.